Sorry to say,
Yeah, so am I.
but I'm looking forward to it.
I understand.
Feel like that was in the,
I just gotta find out.
in,
So that's the hunting aspect.
balance is really 2 million.
Oh, okay. You know, I don't know.
And then
I
the
don't
gas
know.
stations and stuff.
I'm not gonna-
And then,
I don't think I'll be going up to that round though. I would still credit you.
I don't know, well, I know the market, the rates being so low, it's affecting their bottom line.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just barely. Okay, it is. Oh, wow, I guess I'll wait for you, Dave. Let me know when.
Oh,
There you go.
Good evening. It is 5:15 on June 2nd, 2021. We'll call the meeting to order. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brian Ames was called out of town. He may be joining us in listening mode on the phone a little bit later. Okay. Accept and approve with waiver of the reading of the minutes. A motion, please.
To approve with a waiver of the reading of the minutes, the minutes for the our meeting dated May 19th, 2021.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Is Commissioner Larry present by Zoom or something? I'm sorry.
He said he
Madam
was
Chair?
coming.
He's coming? Okay.
All in favor? Opposed? 5-0. A motion concerning the warrants.
Move to approve payroll warrant 2119 and corrections warrant 2138J.
Please.
Second, Roland.
Any questions for the treasurer?
Just no questions, but thank you for getting back to me about my question 2 weeks ago. I did read it.
Okay.
Much appreciated.
Any other questions? Favor? Opposed?
Respect.
Okay. I would like to ask for a motion to take item 12 at this time out of order. I believe it's just going to be a 10, 15-minute executive session with the attorney, and that way we can be respectful of her time and being here this evening. Does anyone wish to make a motion to that?
Chair? I can make a motion to move item 12 on the agenda up to address that right now.
Second that motion.
Any discussion or questions about that?
Madam Chair, what's the purpose of that?
It's just a short meeting and just to respect her time.
Decisions taken pursuant to that executive session afterwards?
No.
None at all. None at all.
There are no decisions that I could see being made from that. That's not the purpose of it.
Thank you.
All in favor?
You have to make a motion with the numbers and the title.
Well, that's when we go into that
Oh,
session.
favor of
just to
moving it.
Move it. I'm just asking to move it. Opposed? Okay. One, and I know now I'm imposing on your time, but I really think it's just going to be a 10-minute in and out, okay? All right. A motion, and let's make sure we call off the entire title of section 12. No?
I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Title I MSRA Section 4056 subsection E, which is about consultation with legal counsel.
Second?
Order, Madam Chair. The law requires us to state the specific topic of that discussion,
It's consultation with attorney.
but concerning what? Is this concerning the letter I sent to the chair, or is this concerning something else?
Her report. After we consulted with her report back.
So did she send you a report after the document that we received, the May 21st document that you have?
No.
Thank you.
And you had the second on that. Okay, all in favor? Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay. Let's go in.
You give me 30 seconds before you start, because you guys kind of pause this.
Okay.
Shut it down, but not stop the meeting.
Okay.
Is anyone watching?
Is anyone with us?
We have two. We have Sharon Segal, the treasurer of Town of Wales, and a lady named Stephanie. Good.
So Chair, on the MCCA report, I do not have anything to report since last meeting. Legislature is meeting, but nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Central Maine Workforce Board.
I don't have
Commissioner
anything
Kelly.
new at this time, Chair. There were some rumblings about the budget, but I don't have anything new to update you.
Okay, thank you. Administrators report.
I'll just mention 3 or 4 things here. Still reviewing the American Rescue Plan rules and information. The budget process is ongoing. Legislative bills and so on. And Dave and I met with Jeremy Gray and Kevin Fogg of the court system regarding the courtroom maintenance on projects that they're looking to do within the next year.
I would love to hear a little bit more about the courtroom.
Okay. Essentially, the discussion is painting. They're doing some woodwork on the top, one of the front desks and so on.
We want to make the church bench more ergonomic. So they're gonna be taking it apart and making it so it rises and lowers, make it adjustable for each individual judge. There's a witness stand on the side that is really rough shape. Somebody from many, many years ago decided to repair it with wood cutting. So they're gonna be doing total rehab on that witness stand.
And then at some point, probably next spring, they'll be doing new carpeting.
When are those windows gonna get here?
They have determined that they are going to hold off on those, at least for the immediate future, and I'm not sure if they've scuttled that. The cost came in much higher than they had anticipated.
And Dave, there's comments from the public. Would you let me know if either of the members of the public viewing have a comment they'd like to make?
I would like to make sure that the public can speak to any agenda item as required by the bylaws or permitted by the bylaws. Thank you.
Whatever they want to talk about.
Any comments from the public?
There was no one raising their hand.
Point of order, are their faces visible at this time now, finally? Can the faces be seen on camera if they so wish?
If they do, yes, I can bring them over.
Thank you.
You won't be able to see them, but they will be recorded. Thank you.
Okay, the 2021 Commissioners schedule. It's June, and we're still looking for a motion on that. I'm sorry, we'll get that put to bed tonight.
You had made
Administrator.
a minor change back early on and then didn't actually vote on it after it was the
Okay,
change.
so a motion concerning the 2021 Commissioners schedule. Commissioner Madore,
Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the schedule as presented.
thank you. A second?
Second.
Terry Kelly. We've discussed this at length. Is there any other further discussion?
Madam Chair, I
about
make a
this?
motion to change that to include the Wednesday after the July 4th Wednesday. Thank you.
Okay, second to that motion to add
Madam
the
Chair,
July, yes.
What does the gentleman's motion do?
He wants to add the meeting in July here to the July 4th meeting.
The one that we,
I want to add the meeting to make sure we're in compliance with our bylaws as we set up the schedule that was not in compliance with it. And to have us in session, we should be here two times a year or 2 times a month.
A second to that? Okay, motion dies for lack of a second. All in favor? Oh,
sorry.
yes, go ahead.
Just a thought. I wonder about I like the idea that we continue to put this workshop on there, but I wonder if we should just get that off sometime in the future.
we have workshops
would-
whenever we need.
I wonder if
them.
it's confusing to people.
Mm.
But I'm still fine with the way it is, but just maybe next time.
Needed.
Yeah.
Need one.
If we're going to have one, we would announce it in advance. Is that, am I correct?
Yes.
But it limits us to having it only after the second regular meeting though, right? Is that what I'm is that how I understand that?
We
I
have
mean,
them,
because I guess, I don't know why we wouldn't have it after the first meeting of the month.
Right,
But the way,
I got you.
or anytime that's, well, actually works for all of us. Because that's
that's
really the key.
that's the way we've been operating. When we need to have a workshop, we have a workshop. Doesn't have to be
Um,
after the second.
We could remove the word second and of the month.
Is that
if
a
needed.
motion?
I move we remove the workshops after the second meeting of the month. If needed, remove the word second. And of the month.
Okay, second of the month, and Commissioner Kelly seconds that. Any other discussion about that?
So they'd just be workshops if needed.
Workshops if needed.
Workshops after the meeting if needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, all in favor of changing, taking off the second meeting of the month? Opposed?
Opposed? Madam Chair, we're just changing that right now. We're not voting for the whole schedule. at this
And now we have
We're just changing that.
yes, we're just changing that. Now the vote to accept this schedule, all in favor. As amended, the schedule as amended, okay? And opposed?
Opposed, I request the minister reflect we should be here twice a month.
Public safety assessment, all right.
Sure,
Thank you.
$2.
I believe you too. As you know, I had a building committee. We've been working, giving tours out to the people that are on it. Harriman Associates, a representative, actually two, volunteered their time to help get us going, and their familiarity with the building and long history. And we looked at what other proposals are in, locally, statewide, how these things are done. And basically, we got to a point where we need professional help to move forward and to bring options back for consideration, to identify needs. And they gave a whole proposal that I forwarded to all of you and made hard copies for downstairs to do a start to finish proposal. It was pointed out that they sharpened their pencils due to their familiarity with this facility, to our needs and the history they have, which is appreciated. But I also informed them through email and conversations back and forth, county policy, how things worked. And I'd like to, if we could go piecemeal, which they said piecemeal would be fine. It would change the timelines. And I said, that's fine too. So at this point, I spoke with Larry and Clarice about what's available for funding. The consideration came up where it would seem to meet what would qualify under the American Rescue Funds. There's limited opportunities in the county budget, although there are other potential for the commissioners to consider. And I'm asking for $4,000 to contract with Harriman Associates to conduct a public safety needs assessment, which would basically identify what we actually needed for square footage.
I would go further than that and ask for the board to approve the full cost of 35. Leaving it to, as we progress, so that we don't have to come back and as we move forward, request approval for every
I actually
aspect.
agree with that. And my first approach, Maurice, was, does it qualify? But understanding, I was asking for, I support right now, and I feel very comfortable with going through the whole contract. And if you look at how it's structured in stages and what we know we'll need at the end, because basically they said, if you took every available square foot in the county building right now, so that means spaces, closets that aren't used, or potentially offices, there's probably not enough to to meet the needs of the square footage you require. They thought it is very telling. If you looked at, and I know I've offered the 2011 rule, is that
the 2011 study, there was projections in 2011 where the sheriff's office, I'll speak only for, it gave with the county too, but where the sheriff's office would be in 2030. And Roland's math, which I'll go with where we have staff now and needs that I've identified, we're one shy personnel wise of where they projected we would be in 2030. And in 2011, when they did it, they had no idea call sharing was going to go away. No idea of the amount of data and collections as far as records go to building cases. I mean, 2011 was still very reports, photos. There's a lot more to evidence collection now. So it was actually interesting running through the 2011 report. It's obvious to those of us that work here, but in doing this with the committee, it was discussed, should we evaluate the existing space? Because it's been evaluated before, actually twice. The problem with the evaluation is always incorporated the why, and we know the why is not available. Therefore, you have a large building, but would never meet the demands that just the sheriff's office has. So I agree with Larry going forward with the full contract, but I also understand where you might be thinking, and I don't want to be the guy to kick the can down the road. I want to address issues. The $4,000 to get the initial step done would get us going in the right direction. But then again, we would be back time and time again until eventually we get through every phase at the $35,000. And also, if it was $4,000 tonight, Clarice has already agreed to help me create a line in the patrol budget so I can request the balance to incorporate next budget to make sure we make some progress. Not that it'll get approved. And the reason, that's kind of an inside joke. We don't have the ability to create an account. So Clarice said she'd help us because she's the treasurer. So, but it would be helpful moving forward if we could endorse the whole contract, but a minimum of $4,000 would at least get us started in the right direction.
Commissioner Rowe.
One of the questions is more to you and to the other commissioners. In 2011, we hired Harriman and Associates. And in 2019 or 2018, you hired Allied Engineering. And now we're back with Harriman. And I've got no problems, but I'd like to know how we got to hire, why we went to Allied Engineering a year and a half. And I'm not sure who should answer that question.
Yeah, I'm not on the committee, so there'd be others that would know that more than I.
So Harriman Associates is extremely expensive. So we decided to go with an architect who's definitely involved. She does all the courts designing. She runs like Oxford, just got her new courthouse. She's their architect. The courthouse that's in Augusta, she designed that courthouse and her rates were significantly lower. So that's why I decided to go with her. Allied Engineering is an engineering firm that she hired to do the assessment of the heating system in her behalf. That's how we got to that point.
And how did we get back to Harriman?
I don't know, twofold. The first was after the article was published in the paper, some local representatives from Harriman reached out to me willing to assist. One of them is the wife of a former maintenance employee, explaining the long history and that they'd love to get involved in a county project. Again, not knowing what we're looking at, whether it was this building or another. And I tend to lean towards local companies when I look at things. So I always go local first option. I thanked them, said some of these things are beyond the scope of my responsibility. I can bring offers to you, opportunities to you, and things that I feel need to be addressed, but we need the commissioner's support. I said, I'll be in touch. Sometime later, I was speaking to a commissioner about the Allied proposal, about my involvement and what we did and how I met with the woman. And I believe there was a contact there through Harriman as well. And it was the person that was involved prior. So it was recommended that I called Judy, and I did. And I told her where I was, what I was thinking, what my experience was dealing with things like this, what I saw from this Allied proposal. And I said, I want to move forward with a process, address the issues, at least bring things to light and have others involved in decision making. But I don't want to go through a failed process. If it's not supported, that's different than a process failing because of how it's done. So I need to incorporate anything. She offered to help meet with me a couple of times and get involved with the committee at no cost. But at some point, she would have to enter into some contract. She met with us several times. She went on a tour of the building as well as William. They, evaluated things, listened. We gave them feedback from staff. She participated with the meetings with the building committee. She's actually paid attention to things I needed her to pay attention to, future considerations of the jail. It's not, all of it. Not that that's something we're addressing right now, but it always needs to be part of every decision we're making. And then we asked, because we're at a point where we needed the professional help. So we asked for a proposal. We compared it to the county policy, realizing there's some things we could do on our own. But then it became a funding issue, and I don't have $4,000 in an account somewhere to go forward. So one of my members of the building committee is also on the budget committee, and he works in municipal government. And we started talking about how the county could address this so we could move forward. And then we went with talking about the American Rescue Funds, getting some guidelines there. And it's, the irony is, if you are just looking to identify things they're willing to, I can't swear to it, but they're proposing, you deal with COVID issues with the American Rescue Funds. If we weren't already, if I wasn't, or the committee wasn't, or we weren't as a group, already looking at the needs of the sheriff's office as far as space, and just looked at the COVID funds, it might very well be worth saying, geez, because there's so many working in this facility, maybe we ought to use the COVID funds to do exactly what we're proposing here. I think sometimes where we get confused is we're already in the process of realizing there wasn't enough space and there was issues in our current setting. So it's almost like, here we have identified an issue. Wait a minute, here's an opportunity to address it. And if we weren't working at the issue, I think the opportunity with the American Rescue Funds might still very well, pass the straight face test like it's doing today. I think it just gets confused. Timing is everything. If that makes sense to you.
Commissioner Madore?
On your question of Harriman and Associates, to me, I had talked to Judy, because Mrs. Johnson, because she was involved with a previous study that was conducted here. And I've talked to the other architect that was involved with the basement and reviewed the previous plan with the building. To me, it seemed like there was nobody better to do this project than Harriman and Associates because of their experience, like generally with other organizations, but also with Androscoggin County. And that historical knowledge is really important for something like this. So they see the future, they see the past and what's going on now. So I'm very much in favor of using this local company. I think the plan is overdue. So I'm very much in support of us approving $36,000. That is the 35 plus the additional for reimbursable expenses for us to make sure that we're planning appropriately, because this is some of the most important decisions that this county is going to be making probably for decades, and needs to be well thought out. And these are the people that are going to do it, and this is the sheriff that's going to do it in this administration. And on your statement about the money and the justification regarding the rescue money, I think it would be beneficial if we approve it to make some sort of like justification statement as to why it matches it. I definitely absolutely on board with that. Makes perfect sense.
I gave to Clarice my random thoughts, and I think pretty much everything that you can point to with the facility as far as air quality, air circulation, square footage, meeting with public, lack of meeting space, meeting with victims, anything you can imagine that's related to COVID, American Rescue Funds in our current facility, covers it.
And I would encourage you to also, share that with them.
Oh, we have to.
Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. Because that's obviously the point of it. So, after we discuss it more, that this is what I would suggest, is that we give the sheriff permission to pursue this and to allot $36,000 for the plan.
Madam Chair, I make a motion for $4,000, seeing as we do not know for certain if this will be covered by the federal government. And I believe my understanding is that we're still working on final interim guidelines.
Other discussion.
Madam Chair, I think Commissioner Larry makes a good point. The sheriff indicated that he'd be okay with 4,000. I'm interested in funding the whole thing. At the same time, I wouldn't mind being a little cautious. I think the attitude of the board is probably to fund the whole thing. And I don't think it's into the world if we just start a little bit slow.
Like to clarify a thing. I submitted the whole proposal to have the conversation, which thankfully you guys are having. On discussions, I always want to make progress, move forward. The more you read the proposal, the more it makes sense to enter into it. But when I was talking to Larry and Clarice, you know, it was said, well, why don't we get started and move in a request for $4,000? That's what I did. I think at the end of the day, we have to adjust a budget line to incorporate the balance to get it done, or else we're just spinning our wheels. Or we come back again to get the next phases done. So it's up to you guys. I agree with what Larry's saying, to enter in the whole agreement, and I understand what Commissioner Larry is saying as well. And it's your decision. 4,000 gets us started and it'll bring us back repetitively. Where if we sign the whole deal, we deal with the results sometimes this winter.
Treasurer Proctor, what is your official, opinion, being the treasurer, about, our current guidance regarding our expenditure funds? Do you feel that this is an allowed expense?
Yes, I am nearly positive. I mean, 99.9%. I mean, it's the Fed, so I gotta leave that 0.1% of uncertainty. But yeah, that falls under the social distancing and, like you said, the air quality. And they have said many times in the calls that I sit in with Treasury to plan well, be thoughtful and plan well. And I think because we're doing a study and we're seeing what we need, I think that falls very nicely in what they're asking us to do. To actually have the study done. So yes, I agree that it would fall in there. And I don't have a problem making a statement to go with my report that I have to send to them to justify it.
Sheriff, in your dealing with them, do you think they'd be agreeable to a contingency to where, if something should happen, that 1% that she's making reference to happen,
Point 1.
that we can, exit after 4,000?
So in other words, enter into the agreement and say at any point, if we discover that something doesn't pass the federal guidelines,
Yes.
did no harm and we're done at that point. I'm sure she was very amicable and she kept repeating, this is a draft, because I'm thinking Roland was in the meeting where we discussed at great length the benefits to evaluating our current workspace. Were you in that meeting?
I think so.
And there's some debate over if that's worthwhile. Because of the footprint of the building, because of the lack of square footage. And in a lot of times, like Lewiston PD, they just completed it for Lewiston PD. They evaluated their current and they constructed a new, so you got a comparison. It's speculative, but they did that. And they do that exercise oftentimes because it will show the deficiencies or the lack of square footage you have available in your existing structure. But when you look at what we're looking at and the size of the agency and what the projections would be through the space needs assessment, you almost wonder if it's worth doing the evaluating this space for our purposes, not for business purposes or county government, but for the sheriff's office. It might be a waste of resources, but they're amicable to do anything. The only thing is when you sign the agreement, they can go start to finish and they have a timeline that they'll set with you. If we go piecemeal, it's a little bit longer, which I feel is okay because it gives us a little bit more time to evaluate. But I'm sure if I explain to her the concerns with the commissioners are willing to go full contract, but they would need on that 1/10 of a chance that it doesn't meet federal guidelines, they would need the opt-out. And if not, then what we could do is understand that the funds are available through the commissioner's authorization and go step by step. It expands the timeline and it might end up costing pennies more, but that puts your safeguard in place. Either way, I don't have a problem if that's the route you elect to go. They've been very good to deal with. So if I tell them the plan would be step to step, unless they're willing to give us the opt-out because we discover there's an issue, which isn't an unreasonable thing. We could clearly get something done that meets your concerns.
Well, that way we could get on your timeline, but still address the concerns that Commissioner Larry had and you know, the 1% you talked about. If we have an escape valve after 4,000, if we find out that.
Because by that time, we would know anyway.
Yeah, I filed my first report on August 31st. So if I was to submit this with the report, then I'll find out. And then I really don't think it's going to be a problem. I'm sure.
I guess procedurally, I don't know how to go about this, so I'm going to need some help on that. Yes, go ahead.
So I appreciate the expert opinion on the matter from our treasurer. I'm hearing that 0.1% doubt. But on the other side, I'm also seeing that there's a need, and there's a need whether we get the money or not, whether we can use the rescue money or not. The need's there. And we need to make good decisions. And this is going to allow us to make the good decisions that we need to make so we can, best use our taxpayers' money. And $4,000 doesn't get us very far in terms of building discussing one of the most expensive capital projects that a local government can make. And either way, we need to plan for the future. So whether we use the rescue money or not, we have to plan for what we need. And I think it seems like whether we can use the money or not, we can find room in our budget to plan for making good decisions. And that's why I'm supportive of going forward with it. I think it shows commitment to this organization. And I don't see a lot of benefit to going about it piecemeal when the writing's on the wall and we know the need is there. And we can find the money and we have money and we have pretty good assurance that we can use the money, and I think it all makes sense, and I completely agree. And so I think Androscoggin County has kind of piecemealed things for a really long time, and sometimes with really poor results. And so we know we need it, and so that's why I want to go for, I want to see it through, and that's why I want to go and approve all of the steps tonight.
So, oh, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Porter.
So first, I'd like to clarify that I'm good with going with Harriman and Associates. On my question, it was just to try to build background knowledge of what happened previously. The other thing that I want to clarify is that this proposal is to review only the sheriff's area, not the entire county building. So I just want to make sure we all understand that this room and many other rooms in this building are not being evaluated in this proposal, I
The
believe.
treasurer's office did ask to come with me if I'm successful. The other thing I want to point out that you guys are kind of, if you look at, and during the proposal, there's, it's another checks and balances. It's a pay as you go, so much down, so much on completion of certain phases, so it allows how it's structured with payment, it would allow for when you get to certain points, you can actually evaluate if you want to move to the next point. So that's already built in there, but it's a little different. But if that gives you some comfort in seeing how we're structured, I don't remember how, I just remember, geez, by the time we were to enter into this and your timeline and how it gets extended, if we could get into January for the final payment and something fails, I can actually put it in the budget. You know, and typically contracts are honored through the budget process because it's a bill you have to pay. Anyway, and we are, you know, I think this was May 18th when I got this proposal, so just how it works, there's a timeline to everything, and it changes.
I think where we're at. If I'm wrong, please speak up and correct me. What I think is going on here, we have one motion with a second to, that needs to either be voted on or disposed of, one or the other, for the 4,000. We have a suggestion with no motion and no second to go ahead and just contract for the full amount. We have a suggestion with no motion and no second to contract for the full amount, but add a contingency where it would come back to the board if that 1% problem arose.
It's 0.1%
Oh,
actually.
okay, thank you.
Steve's here, it's a 10.
If that out of the box thing happens, then, you know, we could bring it back and make sure we're all on board, or the majority is on board with going forward. So those are the three things, but we do have one motion and a second on the table that we probably ought to decide what the board wants to do about that, and that is to take the first segment only and contract that out. So I think I got who made the motion. Let me make sure I've got that in my notes. Yes, thank you. Okay, so all those in this, you would be voting affirmative would be, you would be voting in favor of paying just, contracting just for, is this 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3? Is that how, what the 4,000 would pay for?
No, the
1.1,
4,000 is
1.2.
task one, which is just a whatever it's called.
Space need
Space
analysis.
needs analysis.
Okay. So all those in favor of contracting for just the
1.1
and 1.2, then space needs and, okay, for 4,000. All those in favor? And those opposed? Four. Okay. And the other two suggestions, is there a motion concerning either of the other two suggestions?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the full amount with the contingency that the sheriff returned to the board at every step, and we have the option to. How did you put it?
Well, the option would be is if the funds will not cover it, then we would reconsider.
Yes.
It would not be every step. So I
Yeah.
just want to be clear
Okay.
with what you, well, your motion.
We have the option to,
With the contingency, that if it does not get covered by American Rescue Funds. I'm not trying to put words in your
Yes.
mouth. That was what I put
Yes.
out there, but whatever you'd like to.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
obviously, if we discovered that there's a problem with the funds not covering, we would have to come back to you anyway. So that's an automatic. That obviously, we'd have to come back to the board.
Right.
Uh,
Anything
for-
is that we would have.
I will have her add it to the draft, and she understands where we're coming from, because we had two commissioners, two budget committee members, and I think overall, a lot of information. And plus their whole history of working with the county, they get it all. When we talked American Rescue Funds or budget, I said it, you making use of American Rescue Funds actually saves the taxpayers a lot of money, so I would think the commissioners want to go that way. But if this happens tonight, then I'll budget for $32,000, because either way, it's got to get done. So she totally understood, and I'll say they're willing to do the whole thing, but we have to have an exit clause if we discover beyond the $4,000 service, I'm assuming, beyond the $4,000, if we discover after that commitment is done, that the American Rescue Funds on that 0.1% chance don't qualify, then we have to get out of the contract. Is that what you're looking at?
And the second to that motion?
Madam Chair. Sheriff Sampson, you mentioned that there was 2 commissioners on that committee. How was that committee picked? Who assembled that committee?
I did.
And could you explain to me in the charter where you have the authority to set up a committee that would then
Yeah,
be
we're right now
advocating
there-
for the financial expert?
For discussion.
Point of order, Madam Chair, it is charter that is accurate.
On me. I'm the one that decides.
Commissioners may call point of order, Madam Chair. That's like Robert's Rules 101. That's
The
Robert's Rules
chair
101.
Decides the point of order, and I'm saying this is not germane. That's a whole different conversation that we've had in the past, we can have in the future, but this is not about.
Based on a committee that
this.
was set up in violation of the charter.
The
Violation of the
committee-
charter, Madam Chair.
Okay, we're moving on. Any
Exactly.
other
You will never
discussion?
address my questions, Madam Chair.
Chair, the gentleman may make a motion to approve, Chair, but otherwise.
I make a motion to.
Ruled the chair.
Okay, a second. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, any other discussion about Commissioner Kelly's motion? Mr. Poyer, Commissioner Poyer.
I'd like to second it with the corrections or clarifications that Sheriff
you.
Sampson added to it, because I think we need to put the 2 together.
Yes.
I think
Yes,
that's what
I
you
just-
wanted to say.
Yes, I just didn't know how to put it into words effectively.
Yeah,
so,
I think
Yes.
he clarified it. But I'm-
Can the motion be restated, please? Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think the motion is to direct the sheriff to contract with Harriman Associates for the proposed study. And with the understanding that
After task 1.
after task 1, that if there is a question in terms of the rescue money not being able to be used, that the sheriff will come back to the commission for further review.
And have Harriman, if need be, exit, and then we'll have to go traditional budget. We'll still have time to catch it for the budget process. But I think your concern was making sure we get out, so I'll have to add that. So what he said along with in the proposal, exit no harm.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, you look at that 35 and, I choked when I first read it. But I have no point of reference of what these
Apparently,
things cost, but when I ask around, it seems to be right in line.
What I got is we were lucky to get it for less than 50.
That's-
People basically said what you got is $50,000 to $75,000.
So
I asked somebody that does do this kind of thing in Turner there, and they said, oh, that's a deal. Didn't look like a deal to me, but I have no point of reference, so I shouldn't comment on if it's a deal or not. I'm gonna take the recommendation of someone else.
So while we're.
well, making that motion, I get, do you think that this additional $1,000 is something that we should also approve?
Well, I think with the amount that was recommended, we'll be able to get it done. Of course, there's always surprises, but I tend to plan for the worst case scenarios and then try to, not to the extent of Jeff, where I try to nickel stuff down, but I look for potential savings. So if we only spend $27,000 and complete the task, that's fine. Do I think we'll go over the proposed fee? No, because we're not building anything, we're not breaking ground, and we're not making any purchases. So I feel comfortable with going just with the proposal.
So we should have it stated 35,000. And I'll make that motion a wrap.
Okay, because your suggestion is the one that still hanging out there, so.
Was it 35 or the 35 plus one?
35.
Okay.
We can do a bottle drive, Larry, if we need to.
That's right.
When I said we, I was talking to Jeff.
Well, it didn't sound like you wanted the additional one, right? That's what I heard from you.
I'm fairly confident that, you know, the incidentals will work themselves out, and I think there could be some savings in task 2 that I'll bring back to the committee for consideration, because actually Judy and William, who's been the other one we've been dealing with, brought up, I kept speaking safety, 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 which I prefer not to get too much into for tonight's purposes. And they were talking safety as in health. So there was an interesting dynamic. And that's what led us to believe that evaluating every usable foot of square footage in this building probably wouldn't be as necessary, because it's kind of obvious. Especially when you take considerations to abutting property out of consideration. So there might be some savings there to make up for the $1,000 you're concerned about.
Madam Chair, is this recommended based on the committee, this expenditure?
The committee went through a whole, we call it PowerPoint over how these things are done. How they were just recently completed in Bath and places in New Hampshire, places across the state of Maine, and the normal processes and what happens with each process. On completion of that, the committee, with the exception of, I think, 2 people, was interested in a proposal. I shared the proposal with the entire committee and got positive feedback from everybody. Some were actually shocked at, the price was, they were shocked at the price for the service, because they thought there was a lot of value to it. And when I spoke with Harriman on the follow-up about details, they explained how that was. So I informed the committee that I'd be taking the proposal back to the commissioners. One of the budget committee members actually let me know that there's an option where the commissioners could call the budget committee back to get the funding to do it, because you can't do anything until you know what you're looking at. So yes, the committee, without doing an official vote, was supportive of this and understood it's been as part of the process. The proposal was shared with them. Some asked for the 2011 building study, which I gave them, but they all knew where we were going.
Well, Chair, now that I think we all know what Commissioner Kelly's proposal is, I would like to second that.
Okay, I have in my notes that Commissioner
Yeah,
Poirier
Commissioner
already
Poirier
seconded. Is that right?
You-
Am I
you can
wrong?
take- You can say, I don't, no, I don't, yeah.
All right,
Whichever
so
works
that
better.
everyone's
I-
very clear, a vote in the affirmative is voting to authorize the sheriff to go ahead with the contract with Harriman with a contingency. Okay, all those in favor? Okay, opposed?
Opposed, I request the minutes reflect this motion is based in part on approval of a committee set up in violation of the charter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Sheriff.
Thank you.
Change out notebooks. I've got a whole notebook on American Rescue Plan, and that's where we're going next. So discussion on, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. Yes. Sheriff,
I don't have.
okay, we'll do it next meeting. Next meeting, we're going to be reading the commendation that was sent to you from Lewiston Police Department, just to let you know. Put on the agenda for the next meeting. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I'm just thinking. Yeah. Do you want the individual, do you want him advised?
Yes. Well, that's up to you, but we want to read it. We want to make sure that,
Somebody will be here to represent.
Yeah.
I can't. I know his rotation and sometimes, believe it or not, people in our profession are uncomfortable being recognized. So he may not elect not to, just,
that's fine.
it's not an ill will. I got recognized once at the state, and it was the most embarrassing experience of my life. So I can understand why they feel that way. But I will let him know that he's invited if he wants to bring his family. You know,
And I'll try to send that to you ahead of time, Mr. Sherlock, but I better write that down or I won't remember to do it. That's my fault. All right. American Rescue Plan. I guess we need to have a discussion about it's a big job, and we need lots of ideas and discussion, and that's, I've assumed that was going to take up most of our meeting this evening. Did you want to start, Administrator, with any direction here?
I was just interested in listening to you. Clarice can start. She's been actually more involved with all of the intricate details of all of the NACO webinars and so on. I would say it appears to us that what we want to do in this building would qualify. The first thing that appears in several places in that document is HVAC, because heating, air, and all of that, which is part of what we're looking to do. The original estimate we have was $2.5 million, is probably 3.5 to 4 now, or will be by the time we start the project. That all seems to, and then doing what the bottom, depending on how the study comes out and so on, but that very well could be part of the project as well, of the basement area. That's a big plus, because we were looking to bond $5 million, and it would look as though we don't need to do that.
Go ahead. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I'm not really prepared.
Oh, that's okay.
So yeah, and with what Larry was saying, all through it, it talks air quality in public facilities. Really, any adaptations, like this is the wording, adaptations to public facilities to mitigate COVID. So social distancing, air quality, anything like that fits into that. That's really the main focus of the whole thing. I mean, there's some other stuff, but revenue loss, which they have a really funky way of calculating revenue loss, which, and premium pay for essential workers. And then, of course, there's partnering with nonprofits, anything for the economy, small businesses, stuff like that. You know, those are the things that fall. Anything to help the effects of COVID or mitigate it in the future. So I don't know exactly what you guys wanted to talk about.
We're just trying to start the ball rolling. It's a big job. It's hard to even know where to start. Commissioner Madore, I know you had some thoughts on it earlier.
We can start small. I mean, clearly we get a little bit of lost revenue, civil division. We got a little lost revenue from, as Commissioner Poirier told me, from our upstairs historical society.
So just to be clear on the lost revenue with the new guidance, it's the county overall, and you can't break down individual departments, which is,
So does that mean you just lump it all together and you say we lost this
Yeah.
much?
yeah.
Okay,
and-
well, we
and
gotta
close-
figure out how
and-
we got there though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta, so
it's- Deeds did so well that,
it's like a net.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that counteract the other ones?
pretty much, we haven't finished doing a calculation, because you can do that.
You know,
Because you can calculate what do they call it? Future
Growth, right?
growth,
growth
yes.
Yeah.
So after, we can probably get some after we calculate that. But deeds pretty much evened out for civil and probate.
Okay.
As far as loss, but we can calculate for growth.
Okay, well, maybe there's some,
Yeah.
some wiggle room there, but I don't know, I think it's be easy for us to get lost in the weeds on it, but one of the things that I really want to see happen with it is I want to see some of the money get put toward what we considered, what it kind of says is hazard pay, which is, it's a pretty general term. I would really like to see a modest amount of money go toward our staff for the run out period of the money that we have for each year. I think it's been a trying time, and I think that our employees deserve it. And I think it all fits into the rules around it. I think everybody who's on staff in Androscoggin County is deserving of a small amount of that hazard pay. So that's one of the things that I really want to see baked into our proposal, whether we, disagree on whatever, something for businesses or whatever. I think that it is really important to recognize that. I have my own thoughts about how much money it should be, but I think something is very important.
Thank you.
Yeah, the pay for employees, Luis and I have made that a very important part of going forward. Because our employees were working with the public and so on and so forth, where a lot of other places, they were essentially closed down. There was a lot of stuff that's still going on in various places where our people were at the front lines and doing what we needed to do.
I agree with you too, because they watch their counterparts receive substantial hazard pay, but because of our budget system, we could not offer that. This would be a way to equalize, those that came to work and, okay. Other suggestions, or you can build on
Sure.
Commissioner Medor or other suggestions? Yes,
Where's the whole furnace situation?
you're on.
Can you explain more about that question? Like, what is a line? The boiler's up and running? This is the new one. That all depends on the direction we go. If the,
How's it fit in with the American fund money then?
we haven't discussed that option yet.
It
will
justifiable, full HVAC.
You feel it will fit in?
I think
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
That's what you had said too earlier, the HVAC.
HVAC, yeah.
Okay.
Supporting the floor for some cabinets, don't think that's probably gonna fit. HVAC, absolutely. I think that's very clear.
I have a suggestion that is, lies outside of our own, needs in the within the county building. I would like to see some of the money go towards the support of our local veterans organizations who were severely impacted during the COVID, pandemic. They're responsible for not only socialization of, our veterans of advanced age, but they also, respond to, they are responsible for outreach as well, ensuring that our veterans, have access to the services that they need and, financial assistance when they need it. And, they were, not only are most of the facilities, not up to par, they could, could use some updating as far as, ventilation and, social distancing is concerned if this were to ever happen again. But also they lost many opportunities to raise funds. Many, like the balloon festival was canceled this year and last year. Parades, other opportunities where they would have normally, made money, to keep their organizations afloat. Veterans of Foreign Wars and American Legion specifically, I'm thinking. So I'd like to see some amount of money go to, help them.
Okay, good, good.
One of the things that I was thinking that we should look at is our previous budgets. I know Western Maine Transportation is somebody that we support on an annual basis. I'm not sure if we can help them or not, but I guess I'm looking at this as not necessarily going out and not doing new things, but if we felt that we should be supporting them all these previous years, is there an opportunity? I mean, I don't know if they have a need. I mean, everybody has a need. I shouldn't say that. But I guess I'd like to go back and look at if there are other organizations. That's the only one I could think of real quick.
Are you talking like a one-time gift?
A one time, yeah. And I'm not sure, but if I understand correctly,
qualify.
it does qualify.
That's specifically, public transportation is specifically listed.
Yeah. The other thing is, I saw on the news, I believe, I don't believe it was a paper, the mayor of Auburn was having a meeting, bringing the county commissioners in the city of Lewiston to a joint meeting. And I guess,
Did anyone get invited?
well, that's just it. I didn't get invited, but I saw it on the news.
I did, and it'll be tomorrow, and
Because I can't go.
I've already signed up to go.
So I think it's important that we have a presence there, because if we can coordinate our monies, I mean, the old classic, if you work together, you can do a lot more. And just to hear what they're doing, what they see this as capable of being used for, because I know you're now participating in some online courses, I think you mentioned earlier, not courses, but
Calls, yeah.
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 Anytime we find out what the rest of the communities are doing, even in the other towns, not just Auburn and Lewiston. To me, that would be great. Finding out what other counties' thoughts are might help us realize something that we're just not thinking of. And again, broadband is a big item the state of Maine is doing. I'm not sure how we can do it as a county, but on the other hand, is it something, I do see broadband as something that can help people's lifestyles, because there's no question, working from home was definitely caused by COVID-19, but, people who are moving here from out of state. My daughter is also in real estate, and she's admitted that one of the challenges is they have properties that have terrible Wi-Fi, which doesn't allow those people to move here, which is economically a positive thing for us. So I'd like to at least put that on the list at this point. I'm not sure we're going there or how we're going to go there, but let's at least talk about broadband for sure.
It was definitely carved out of subjects. There's one other question. Oh, if you don't get, I'll send you my invitation. If you don't get it by the end of business day tomorrow, send me a quick email because I forgot, but I wrote it down,
Okay.
so I should
Well,
remember it.
was it just addressed to you? or
No,
is
it was
addressed
in an email, so I think.
to all the county commissioners?
That I don't know. I got it in an
But
email, I
Larry,
think
you're
today.
attending?
I got one just for addressed to me.
Yeah, I guess I can't read, I have a conflict, so I can't make it.
When's the meeting?
Is it the 5th? Oh, it's tomorrow. Oh, then I need to, okay. I need to send it to you tonight. If you don't
Does
get it
anybody else?
tonight, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
So, if you just- Can we just assign Ron to sentence there as well as you?
Please.
It's during the workday. That's so good. All right,
That would take a vote, Madam Chair. So we're speaking of this, so I guess, I'm trying to understand, we're talking about, pooling the monies with Lewiston Auburn, with the 20+ million that, the county's going to receive. I guess, how are we going to make sure we keep things fair and open if we already allowed the merging of the communication centers in violation of the FOA law to be shielded using executive session on 4056C? How, as a representative of my 3 towns that were disenfranchised because of the actions of the sheriff, how will I be able to represent my towns and have a seat at the table when I raised concerns and they were flatly ignored?
okay.
I,
Anybody else have a Discussion
have-
item
yes.
about,
On the connectivity issue, I think one thing that's kind of come up with us streaming our meetings and whatnot, and just kind of general frustration is that we could enhance our presentment of information to the public. So, which is very much related to people having to be at home and whatnot. So while a very, very small amount of money, it seems very justifiable to me that we could potentially use it for building out a new website for ourselves, because it is quite rudimentary, and we could be kind of bridging the digital divide with that.
how do you try, well, I guess I don't know.
I think it fits in it pretty well, and it's more just about being able to get information to people, because people are working from home and whatnot, and just limit the exposure of people to viruses and the like.
The COVID increased the cases and Zoom, et cetera,
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
And-
I
and-
will go ahead,
On that
Dave
note,
has
with the
invested
Zoom,
some in our
we
Zoom this
invest
week.
some money on this infrastructure so we can actually do a better job than Andy can.
Absolutely. Yes.
110%
I
behind you.
think it's very justifiable.
No echoing today. Very good. Thank you for working on that.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mr.
that. Okay, yeah, can I take Commissioner Poyer, then I'll take you, and then I want to come over here and get Commissioner Michael's ideas.
I'd like to clarify one thing about
Yes.
meeting with the city of Auburn and Lewiston. I am not going there with the idea that we're going to combine the money. I am going there for the idea of listening.
Mhm.
I don't understand what he wants to do with that meeting, so please don't prejudge the meeting. as
Judging you. No, I'm not
No,
prejudging
but
you,
the
Commissioner Poirier.
meeting is
No,
about
no.
combining.
I'm prejudging the process and the precedent that's been set. So that's just to clarify. I'm not prejudging you, Commissioner Poirier. I would not do that, sir.
I think I feel some consensus about, we haven't talked about it directly, but I do feel some consensus about, probably because some of it's very straightforward, about the money. And a goal of ours is to try to use a lot of the money to address deficiencies that Androscoggin County has. So what we do know is into the future, there are going to be severe pressures on the tax rate going up. And one of the best things we can do for our community is to use this money effectively to, in any way possible, address those needs into the future. And I feel very comfortable that we all agree that that's a priority of ours. And I think there's particular small pet projects and initiatives that we can fit into that pool, such as the veteran organizations or other things, website, being able to provide better information to people. But that's one of my number one goals for using the money, is to address things that we need to address, and therefore will provide tremendous benefit to the people of Androscoggin County to effectively use that money in that way. So.
Whenever I've heard town, like whenever it's been on the agenda, towns that they're discussing it, I've been trying to go to meetings, and you will get a lot out of it. You'll sit and people have ideas. That's why I'm going to go down to NACO in Maryland, because they're going to have all these sessions where all these counties are going to talk about how they're using their money, just to sit and listen to what they're doing and, hopefully get some ideas from it.
We should assist you in going. I think the county should
No,
assist
I
you
don't
in
want it. It's
attending.
not in the budget. I don't want to ask
Oh,
for it.
we can make it happen.
You shouldn't pay for that flight unless you're going there for some other reason.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead. Your ideas.
regarding the possibility of pooling funds, I doubt there's any interest in the board of taking the money, throwing it into a municipality, governmental agency and having them make decisions. However, there's a strong likelihood, I would think, of proposals coming out of the meetings at the beginning. And then you go to for ideas, and then that group might come up with suggestions. We could do this, we could do this, this, and if we did do this, this would be Auburn share, this would be Lewiston share, this would be county share, et cetera. And then the county could decide by a vote from this board whether or not we accept that, we're putting money in there, we accept that, putting money in there because it's the most efficient use of funds on individual projects. I doubt there'll be one big happy spending spree, which is executed by a new entity. But I see good possibilities out of conversation possibilities.
Any ideas you want to throw in the, into the universe here? Okay.
I think it's gonna be difficult, it's gonna be a difficult conversation for us to kind of pin it all down. But I think one of the first things we should do is try to get a handle on what sort of, hazard pay we provide the staff. I really think that should be the first thing that we approve with the money and then go from there.
One thing I want to address is, I know the administrators had people come to him. I got called to a Leeds meeting where they wanted to talk about an issue they're having in town that they thought would fit in. It would fit in definitely with this money. Also, same thing happened to Livermore. And I'd like to start hearing from them directly. So I was, I guess, my idea was just not to have them all in at once though, because then ideas could get lost in the fray, but start communicating back to them when towns or individuals or organizations have something they want to present to the board. Go through the procedure that is in our bylaws in section 7. About 3/4 of the way down through section 7, it talks about if someone would like to address the board, they set it up with the administrator and sort of schedule them out. So every meeting, we have 1 or 2 organizations that would like to come present their need, how they think, they could benefit from it. I know the lead selectmen, all 3 of them have said that they would like to come to a meeting and talk to, they have a broadband problem in Leeds and a severe one. And so, instead of me bringing their concerns here, I'd like them to come talk to you and them tell you what you said. And so, that's one thing I want to do is as we start, as people start reaching out to us, start getting them into the meetings and having them present themselves, their, what they would like to use the funds for. Second suggestion is going to be way out there, but I'm just going to put it out there anyways, with the second payment. And I'm one of the reasons I'd like to check it out at NACO, and I think I'll use the resource I told you about last time with Senator Collins' office too, Mike and Senator Collins' office, is I don't know if there's any will to take that second section, or that second segment of money and set it up as a trust with a board so that the money isn't just like now we're trying to find places to spend it on. But that way we would have, companies that have been impacted in years down the road or another, if they have, if we have another pandemic down the road, they could apply to the trust board. The trust board would then bring it to our board as a no interest loan that we can, so that the money won't just be of use today. The money can be of use for many years down the road. Now, I know we're not a savings and loan. However, I see companies, and I don't want to get political with this, so I'm going to try not to. I believe interest rates will go up because of, the money going out right now. So I see the small businesses actually having some struggles in the future, and Mr. Poirier's background is in banking, so I'll be happy if I disagree with that. But, and there would be a way for us to help small businesses and communities in the future. What I would have loved to do is, because I believe interest rates are going up, is somehow set up so that the county would not have to get a TAN. By not getting a TAN right now, that would save us $100,000 that we spend for no reason. Well, the reason is to use for usury, but we get no benefit out of it other than we get, the money up front. So but I don't, when I read it, I don't see any way I can fit that into the description, which I was really disappointed about that, because if it's 100,000 this year, that means down the road, if it goes up another point or two, we could be talking $200,000 for usury, and that would just be, a way to get out of that. I don't read, I've read it with that idea, and I can't find it in there. But if we could set up some sort of a trust, for businesses that have been hurt and need to recover with that second half of the money, it would be a way we could use it for many years in the future, as opposed to right now, because we've got to get it off our books in a certain amount of time. So we couldn't keep it and do that. It would have to be put out. And I know I need a lot of advice whether or not we can even do that. And I know that's out there, just a suggestion, just may not be workable, just putting it out there.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was under the impression that, the money had to be allocated within a certain time and projects needed to be finished at a certain time, and putting it into a trust doesn't seem to, meet any of
Projects have to be
those.
finished, or the money has to be allocated.
Has to be allocated by 24 and finished by 26.
Okay.
But there is, in this interim final rule, which I love that wording,
Right.
there is a other rule in there that I just found today that says the interim final rule also provides that the treasury may extend any deadline. So welcome to the real world, the US Treasury.
So we don't really know.
So we don't really know. There is a line in the paper that you gave us a couple previous meeting that does talk about doing loans, grants in response to the negative impact. It's not quite the same way that you're presenting it tonight, because I like what you're doing better than what this little line says. But I guess the answer is that's what we need to do as a group, is talk about these big picture items. And if it floats, if it goes up, maybe there's something we can do there. So I really am pleased to hear you encourage that, say it out loud versus not sharing, because we won't know till we all say those things, be it, is it feasible? I don't know, but I like the idea. It's a good idea. I'm not sure the government's going to let us do it.
That's where I am at too. The only other thought I had on the money is I want to really be very cautious myself. This is just my idea on the money, is that we don't spend it on any expenditures that will increase our budget 3 years from now when the money's gone. We don't want to, and if you're going to your town meetings, everybody's up in arms because of the money the schools are getting, and they're starting these new projects. And I mean, every town I've been to, they are scared to death what's going to happen to their budget in 3 to 4 years. And so I don't want to, as a county, add to that stress, and I don't want, so whatever we do should not negatively impact our budget 3 years from now. It ought to actually be a help to put us in a better financial situation, not in a worse one when the money is gone. Okay, let's go back around the circle. Oh, yes, sir. Yes.
Treasurer Proctor, Is there any provision in there for some sort of economic stimulus or something to help out the general public with the effects of this? Some sort of, something to that degree of like a stimulus check? Is that prohibited, or is that prohibited in permitted in there?
It is included in there, yes.
Yeah, permitted?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, I would like to see, I'm a strong believer that people can make the best decisions with money on their own. I would rather not, as a commissioner, decide to spend millions of dollars. We're talking $20+ million. I would like to see if we could find a feasible way to basically give a stimulus check. It wouldn't be gigantic, but I think I ran the numbers. I was thinking about the county of Androscoggin, and I'm thinking it came to like $170 per person. That may not sound like much to us because we're kicking around $20 million, but for some folks, it's a car payment that may just help take some of the edge off. And that also, if people decide to spend it on things that we wouldn't necessarily recommend spending, but it's legal, mind you, that still stimulates the economy. That's the whole idea that was bipartisan, for better or for worse, of all these extra stimulus checks that we've had thrown around. So I would like to see us find a way to do that and give every resident of Androscoggin County that's of maybe voting age that a stimulus minus the commission, and the administrator, just because that could appear like a conflict of interest, and perhaps a treasurer, sorry. But just that anyone involved with that actual financial funds. But I would like to look at that, because that gives people that money. And if it's such a great idea before, I think then we should go forward with that again.
Sure.
I think that maybe one of the ways we can kind of take steps forward, or at least one step, is maybe we should focus on that. If we do believe that fixing our HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning system fits, and obviously we know that's a need, clearly it would be very beneficial on the tax rate to, use this money for that instead of otherwise. That maybe like one of the first steps we should do after we decide on hazard pay is to approve money for that. Fits, I think it makes sense. We have a proposal that's been presented to us. We have an opportunity to move it forward in short order. And I would love to see if there's some consensus on that, I would love to see our administration kind of think about planning for making that step.
Do the numbers in that proposal with the increase in building supplies, will they still hold true? or
We'd
does
have
that
to
need be
get
redone?
an updated proposal. as far
Thank
as the
goodness
numbers
it
go.
doesn't include lumber.
Oh, my
right?
goodness, building
So-
supplies.
Just keep in mind that building proposal does not include anything but the basement. So when you're talking about fresh air, it does not include the second and first floor. So we have to go out and get the engineer back in to talk about like central cooling, bring fresh air in for the other floors.
I thought this was a larger project that included the replacement
It
of
is.
boilers and whatnot.
It's the boilers for the jail, courthouse,
Mhm.
it's the sheriff's department, but it's not ductwork.
Okay, right. Well, I guess maybe just consider what is gonna meet this and how to get it all lumped together to meet the rules and to meet the needs of the county.
What would it take to get updated numbers? On
We would have to get the engineer back in and give us a quote of their services, kind of just like what the sheriff had done, so he could design what we may need for costs. That's much more in depth than what he did last time.
Mr. Cody, how, but that's just speaking to the basement only, you said, right? Okay, so we would,
For the ventilation, ductwork.
but so wouldn't we be looking at a larger, like the rest of the building?
Correct.
Okay. So that would almost take a whole study in itself.
Correct.
Okay.
So when, that's what I was saying, when Commissioner Knoll brought up, let's go ahead with what we've already
Mhm.
seen. I want to make sure that you guys understood it does not include the remaining of the building.
No, my understanding was the sheriff had decided that area would not fit them.
It still needs to be repaired and restored, regardless of who sits in the seats.
Okay, are we looking at using it still for employee occupancy, so to speak? Like there's different spaces and stuff, so
I don't
there's,
think any decisions have been made either direction,
Yeah.
whether the sheriff's moving out or moving in. Or
Okay.
It's just what's on the plate.
Madam Chair, question here. Are any members of the public, I'd like to make sure we give them the opportunity to speak, seeing as it's part of our bylaws, if they do wish to speak.
We have one member, Sharon Segal, she's the treasurer of
Wheels. Thing, you mentioned section 7 agendas. I just want to make sure that the public or anybody isn't under the impression that they have to check with the administrator in advance of a meeting to be able to come here and speak. There is a procedure for them to notify the administrator, but that doesn't prevent them from coming on a whim at any time and wishing to speak. They don't have to schedule an appointment with the commission. I just want to make sure that people understand that.
We're trying to get it in a nice organized fashion. What I want everybody to have their own time and not get crushed with, 8 other towns have their own time, and by using the procedure in the bylaws would be a way that we could make sure that their ideas don't get lumped up with everybody else's and have a hearing on their
In
needs.
the administrator a gatekeeper, Madam Chair, as in like,
It would just
not
be
today.
following the bylaws. When, if someone would like to address the commissioners, they can actually have it right here. Any person wishing to speak during a public participation segment of the agenda must first notify the county administrator of the person's wish to speak and the matter or matters upon which the person wishes to speak. No action will be taken. So it would, if, like, as people come, like, I would like to go back to Leeds and say, we're ready, the commissioners want to hear, the needs you have. This is Mr. Post's email. If you would email him, he'll put you in a time slot where we can give you our full attention.
Too many people reach out that we would tell them no.
Them out. That's, the idea is to give people a chance to take all the time they need to present. their
Just to
needs.
clarify
How-
though, they could speak with the administrator at the meeting, during the meeting to speak. I just want to make sure we understand that because there's no provision in here that this says the administrator may choose whether someone speaks or not, especially if we're a public meeting. Please answer that question, Madam Chair, because that does need to be established. This is part of the dysfunction that is so chronic. You ignore really common concerns. Like you did when I raised a valid objection and you threatened me in executive session, which was inappropriate.
I think we should just kind of continue to put it on the agenda and talk about it if we can. I don't know if treasurer and the administrator, if they want to appreciate any sort of leadership you guys have and your thoughts, whether it's incremental or not, or maybe you want to talk about the guidelines or that sort of thing. Anything's kind of welcome from my ears. And so just kind of keep moving forward. So that's what I'd like on the next agenda or future agendas.
Is it consensus of everyone that we can start having people contact that? And I think you had some organizations contact you. Is that right? Did I hear you say that in a meeting one time?
Actually, I had one town who just had, before the regulations came out, or the interim final rule came out, who had a question about what was going to, whether I knew broadband, for example, was going to be allowed. They weren't asking the county to pay at that point in time or anything. They were just looking at some help for what the guidelines were. They had that conversation. Off the top of my head, I'm not thinking of any others, but I'm sure there will be.
Yeah, I know, and broadband's been really
One of,
carved out. So many, at least my towns don't have a lot of, there's only one that has a big broadband problem. They were saying Turner has only 7 people in town that do not have broadband, so.
one of the things with, for example, broadband, the state is going to put a lot of money into broadband, from what I understand. And then some of the towns as well. And so, you know, a lot of this is going to come down to state, counties, towns kind of working together to make things happen. For example, it won't make any sense for the county to put money into broadband if the state's gonna take care of all of it. You know, so there's going to be conversations within the next few months as to how things are all going to fit together. And many things probably will be a combination of factors, so state, counties and towns.
I'm sure. It's also a federal program to give recipients of the stimulus free Wi-Fi, which is not quite the same as providing broadband, but the 5G Wi-Fi that they're supposedly in the process of giving away may reduce some of the needs some areas. So we'll have to keep it, see how that affects it.
So we can take positive step forward here. Are we ready to authorize the administrator and buildings maintenance to get us some updated number on the heating and HVAC?
Object. I object. That's not on the agenda to get updated numbers. And I have
don't
nothing
think
in front of
we
me.
Need your approval to get those updated numbers. It's simply something we've already done. All we need to do is update it. So I think we can just do that.
Will that cost the county any money?
It will undoubtedly cost a little bit.
Authority to do so without the permission?
It's in the budget.
It's interesting your attitude towards certain commissioners, and it's interesting that
Object.
you,
No, you can't,
Object
you
to the
can't.
gentleman's statements. You may not take things personally. It's against the rules, your rules. You're a big guy in the rules, and you need to follow the rules and not insult people or talk
ignored
personality.
flatly by the chair and many others. The chair had an hour to talk with the attorney. We got 25 minutes.
A reason to attack anybody else. Period.
It's not appropriate.
What's not?
It's not appropriate to ignore commissioners' concerns, and it's not under their authority to just go and spend more money,
Doesn't give you an excuse to attack somebody else.
and it doesn't give others an excuse to attack me either, which has happened plenty as well,
That's correct. So
But those
don't use
objections
that
have been
as an
rarely
excuse to attack
raised.
somebody else.
except by you, which I do appreciate. Madam Chair, discussion items, agenda items.
Second, motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Did we discuss future agenda? That was this part of it.
Yeah, we missed future agenda items.
I brought up mine.
Were you with, do you, Terry?
I
you wanna
withdraw my
vote?
motion.
Thank you, thank you. Future agenda items?
It's the deputy that we want to acknowledge,
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah,
which we already
I'll try to
discussed.
remember to contact you about that. The deputy we want to acknowledge that received the commendation. I'm sorry, I forgot that. That,
I'll make a note of that. I'm going to be, I'll be out of town next week. So Sandy will, but I'll have notes for that.
I had Commissioner Kelly all set up to read that and try to make sure that Steve gets a copy before the meeting.
I apologize for jumping on Commissioner Larry. It should have gone through the chair.
Madam Chair,
I was out.
apology accepted. Madam Chair, I requested the policy to be considered as a discussion item for the basically the health COVID policy, not the health freedom policy, but the health COVID policy that is still on the books. So I respectfully request that be added to the agenda. The bylaws do state that the chair may not unreasonably delay that to be added to the agenda as requested. So This is the second week. Hopefully, we'll see it on the next agenda.
Yeah, there were things actually that were suggested last meeting, even before that, that didn't make it because we have a very full agenda. And hopefully we can, and we'll get to all those items. Of course, anytime if I don't put it on the agenda, the board certainly has the ability, and I would welcome you to do it, to overrule. And if somebody wants to make a motion to that, I would entertain that. I think everybody got a copy of that. Commissioner Larry asked, and he did ask in a timely manner. We just, even last week, there were some things that didn't make the agenda this week that were requested even before that. But
Madam-
if somebody would like to, I think the rules say 5-2. I mean, if it doesn't have to be 5-2. If the majority of the commissioners want to overrule that, I'll vote with you and make it the 5. I don't want to do something that the commissioners don't want to do.
Madam Chair, we kind of just breezed through discussion items we just put on American Rescue Plan, but this is commissioners only. So I would just ask, how did you meet the legal policy when you did not, you specifically asked the lawyer whether you should answer my legitimately raised questions? How did you meet the legal policy for contacting attorney? But then I feel that you abused your power and short circuited my request by asking whether that should be answered or not. And I really am very disturbed by that occurring.
I don't think we should discuss anything that was talked about in an executive session.
This was in the
right now.
letter. This was in the letter that you sent, Madam Chair. This is not an executive session point of order. So that this was in the letter. So that was not appropriate. You've had 2 times where you've reached out to the attorney back in February of, I think, 2019, where there was a big issue and an apology given by you, Madam Chair. And now, once again, you reached out to the attorney. And I would like to know how you follow that policy and whether it was fair for you to ask whether you should answer those questions. That wasn't what I asked in that letter that I sent to you. I didn't ask whether those should be answered. I said, there's some serious issues with how the executive session was held. And I never got an answer, never sufficient answers. So I'm very disturbed by that. And that raises serious concerns for me representing my 3 towns that have been disenfranchised by the actions of this commission, the administrator, the chair, and the sheriff. And it was wrong. And I request an apology. I demand an apology on that behalf of my taxpayers.
Chair, I want to thank you for being chair.
Amen.
And I think you do a fine job. I've said I don't get everything I want, but I'm not, it's not a complaint. That's you, doing your job. And so you might not get an award next meeting, but you deserve it. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to thank the Commissioner Madore for making that point. I'd like to ditto it as well. I very much appreciate the chair. I think the chair's done a great job.
Madam Chair, were the laws obeyed? Because that was a valid question. I still have never received a full satisfactory answer.
Okay,
And nobody else does that. Point of order. Nobody else does that except me.
to that motion to adjourn,
You're not in charge, Commissioner Michael.
and all in favor of adjourning.
I vote no, and I wish the minutes to reflect that I have serious concerns with how county government is run as a commissioner and what I see. Thank you.